Devon Hennessy has pleaded guilty to his role in the falsely imprisoning and assaulting a man. We remember talking about this at the time that it happened. This was a man who had the word rat branded on his body with a kind of a what do you call it? A cattle iron thing.
Yeah, it's a thing, implement that's used to brand cattle.
Yeah.
I mean, where it's burnt into them, so it's scarred.
Yeah.
I mean, it's horrific. No,
it was a horrific story and horrific and all the rest of it. And there was a number of people before the Special Criminal Court, and some still are. However, Devon Hennessy, who's a 29-year-old is all he is, from Corduff in Dublin, has created madness and mayhem throughout his already short life. He's now going to be facing probably a lengthy prison term in relation to this because of the violence of it. That will be decided in October when he's back before the Special Criminal Court for sentencing. But we'll start by saying that Devon, and those watching, hopefully we'll be able to show you a photograph of him there on the screen. And he's one of three brothers that have been facing charges in relation to this. He's the son of Jason Hennessy, who was shot dead on Christmas Eve in the steakhouse restaurant in Blanchardstown. But he's also the guy who, we'll just have a humour for a moment before we get a bit more serious, but he did threaten to go on hunger strike in prison. A hunger strike that I don't think lasted through the first dinner, did it?
Well, it lasted. I think it was 24 hours.
Was it 24 hours? Well done, Devon.
That was. Some people said that was being charitable.
Yeah.
They weren't happy with the conditions that they had been facing when they were remanded in custody in Portlaoise prison. They were taken to Portlaoise prison, and I think they were put on a particular wing,
which they didn't like.
They didn't like, and partly they didn't like it because I think they were basically told their security couldn't be guaranteed because although Devon Hennessy has a reputation and a justified reputation given some of the violence he's been involved in, but a lot of that violence is against the more vulnerable members of society. In Portlaoise prison, I think he was told that some of the Kinahan allied criminals didn't fancy him on the wing. And so
don't blame them.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, a word that isn't a brilliant word, but it does really describe him, is simply a thug.
Yes, I think so. I think so. And I think that Devon Hennessy would have been somebody that came into his, his criminal career alongside people like Glenn Ward, Mr. Flashy, other people of that era, like Sean Little. He would have been on the edges of that criminal organisation. These were young guys who came to the fore in particular during the Hutch Kinahan feud.
They sort of felt, at least, they were over-promoted too quick. They have no business plan. They use violence almost as a means of entertainment for themselves.
Yeah.
As well as to try and, cement their power. But ultimately, Devon Hennessy, we'll say, is a chaotic criminal that has been going nowhere except behind bars for a long time, for most of his life. Now, events over the past few years, which saw his father shot in front of him on Christmas Eve, and then what happened next, and we'll go back over that because it's very important, I suppose, to see where he's gone after this. I'd say Devon Hennessy has cost this state a fortune already in policing, in his activities, his ability to lurch from one feud to the next. Obviously, behind it, this gang, and Devon Hennessy, I think, is seen as the current leader of an organisation that was once headed up by his father, Jason.
Yeah, certainly there's a core group of 2 or 3 people that are leaders of the gang, and Devon Hennessy is one of them. Now, these are street dealing. This is a street dealing operation in Blanchardstown and Cork.
Dealing what? Crack?
Dealing crack cocaine,
tablets.
Heroin, tablets, cocaine, and probably cannabis as well.
Do they stick to their turf, or
these are street dealers. So while they may have connections with other criminal gangs, they're not sending. They do apparently have some connections with gangs up the north, but they're primarily based in that part of West Dublin. And while they might not be personally handing out deals for 20, 30 euros, they're very much in contact with the people who are.
Yeah.
So these aren't people operating, while they are operating at a high level, these aren't importers or wholesalers of drugs. Now, that doesn't mean that they weren't making very significant money, because they were making a huge amount of money, and there is a huge amount of money, supplying those street dealing networks. But underpinning all of that was, I suppose, a huge amount of violence. They were heavily involved in intimidating people, burning people's houses.
Gun and firebomb attacks.
Also, Devon Hennessy would have played a leading role in what became known as the Corduff feud. Again, involving, I suppose, falling out of people that were, if you want to say, associated with the broader flashy organisation. That was a very violent feud. There was a lot of shots fired, a lot of homes targeted, machete attacks, a particularly violent attack outside Finglas Garda station. And that went on for a couple of years, and Devon Hennessy would have been the leading player in that feud. That's probably why, when he would have first come to kind of the attention of the public at large, I suppose, if you want to put it that way.
So he grew up in Blanchardstown. The father is, as we've aforementioned, Jason Hennessy, whose end was violent and extremely shocking for anybody who was out eating in the restaurant where he was dining with a group of young men who were sort of his underlings. The mother is Veronica Marr, and she's currently before the courts facing 4 serious charges of threatening and endangering the lives of Gardaí and possessing earnings from crime. So we won't say any more about her because that case is before the courts. Nonetheless, they grew up in Blanchardstown. The father, Jason, gets involved in sort of drug dealing and the drug scene quite late in life.
Yeah, an unusual character in that I think he'd been involved in boxing. He was kind of known as a local hard man, but hadn't been regarded as being heavily involved in the drugs.
Or at least a gang leader.
Yeah.
But he becomes that as sort of these younger associates of his come of age. And he's sort of this like unusual older figure that's running this young group of thugs.
Yeah, though, I mean, I think the Devon Hennessy and a couple of his associates would have been operating, wouldn't have necessarily been taking directions, but Jason Hennessy Sr. certainly was involved in.
Do you mean you think he muscled in on his son's business?
Well, I think they ultimately used each other, I suppose, rather than him being a patriarchal figure. I don't think he was involved in some of the more street level stuff that his sons were involved in, but his sons. While I say they're street dealers, they were still making a huge amount of money, and they spread a huge amount of fear. They were certainly became very notorious for the level of violence that they were using, which is unusual, I suppose, in that they sort of mimicked the people that had come before them in Corduff, the Westies.
I would say they more tried to mimic the Dundons of Limerick, and in actual fact there does seem to be some sort of connection there because, of course, Devon Hennessy has been caught a number of times in a BMW, a bullet-resistant BMW car that was once in the possession of the Dundons. Now, it's probably passed through a few hands at this stage. And let me stop there for a second to just tell you how stupid it is to be driving around that bullet-resistant BMW because, believe it or not, somebody offered it to me at one stage, right?
Okay.
And not that I needed or wanted the thing, but I did make some inquiries about it. There was a couple of these in the country at the time, 1 or 2 is all there was. Now, because of the materials that have to be used to make a car bullet resistant, it makes them extremely heavy.
Yeah.
And apparently, you might as well be dragging a container of diesel behind you or petrol, whichever it is, on the road. You can't go like a day without filling it up. Huge big tank.
Yeah.
The weight of it, you can imagine that though. And look, what are you going to do? I mean, you have to step out of the car anyway. It's just, that was a show, wasn't it? From Devon Hennessy. I can afford this. I'm driving this. I'm driving around. Imagine living a life like that.
Yeah. Of course, you see that they were, there was serious threats against Devon Hennessy's life. I mean, really over, from the late 2010s until the moment.
When he was 19, are you talking about? Or younger, 16, 17?
Yeah, so he went through the Cordoff feud. There was a kind of a complex feud again. And then ultimately there was, there was a group of younger criminals. Most of them would have been pretty pally growing up. But as we've said hundreds of times, eventually these organisations split and fall out with each other.
There's nothing complex about it.
No.
You've got, what you tend to have in these groupings is, at least one or two alpha males who come on and want to be in power, and they will clash.
Yeah.
And usually they'll divide, and there is actually at the heart of it, while people will take sides from the grouping, there's two individuals who have personal gripes against one another. And of course, we talk about it in the media and the police talk about it, that they're fighting over turf. They're actually fighting for power and control. It's like two lions.
Yes, and there was, of course, huge money to be made, and there is huge money to be made. So we saw, I think it was called Inside the K at the time. But ultimately, I think it was renamed the
Guards.
The Guards, and it was really
excellent documentary series.
Really excellent documentary series over a couple of series. You see Devon Hennessy and some of his associates operating on that at different times, and you can see just the level of aggression.
Leveled at police as well as
leveled at Gardaí,
neighbours and the rest of the community there, and
big bulky guys.
Yeah,
very a lot of them on social media, going on, in gyms, in clubs. A lot of younger guys around them, a couple of years younger,
and lots of them terrified. A little bit sort of like what the Dundons did in their communities in Limerick. I mean, they were absolutely terrifying people. They sort of. Big bulky guys, brothers, storm out of the house, and they had their pick of what young person they wanted to do what for them, whether it was holding a gun, driving a car, or, taking a shot at somebody.
Yeah, and setting houses on fire. So they had a lot of guys around. I mean, Devon Hennessy is 29, as you say. I mean, you're only a few years younger. But these guys in their late teens, early 20s, and they were going around in a big pack. These young lads were taking directions from Devon Hennessy and his associates. I spoke to a number of families that had been affected by the Hennessy organisation. And what would happen would be there would be some sort of, if some drugs were seized or something like that, there'd be this debt would be put on the person. And if that person couldn't pay, normally these are drug addicts, they couldn't pay it. The debt would start to get bigger and bigger, and then the families would be targeted. The cars would be burnt out, the homes would be attacked, people would be threatened and intimidated, and families would be asked to come up with tens of thousands of euros to pay off debts that had nothing to do with them. Now they're living in somewhere like Cordoff, which is, some of those estates are really built right on top of each other, I suppose. There's not a natural Garda presence. You're not on a main street of a town or something like that. So it becomes really, really difficult. And, that part of Cordoff that they were living in, the level of fear, obviously this attack that Devon Hennessy has admitted to now occurred in the back of his family home. But I'd heard stories about other attacks on people in that general area, where people would describe hearing screams as they walk past the house. Teenagers, young teenagers being taken in and subjected to all sorts of torture to pay up debt. So really, really the most grim end of that business.
And it does give us a little window in the evidence that has been heard so far. And the bail hearing in this case gives us a little window into exactly the kind of horrors that played out in the shed at the back of that house. But I suppose first, just before this occurred, we had the Christmas Eve in Brown Steakhouse, and that was 2023. And a gunman, Tristan Sherry, came into the restaurant packed with families, young families, everything, and shot Jason Hennessy fatally.
Yeah.
And then there was a group of young men that were with Hennessy.
Yeah.
And a number of them have been convicted, pleaded guilty actually before the Special Criminal Court. But they turned on Sherry and attacked him, and they basically beat him to death.
Yes. Now, Tristan Sherry obviously had come in there and committed a murder. So a violent criminal in of himself. Somebody that, again, would have been associated with the broader Mr. Flashy organisation, would have had other associates that were involved in a feud with Devon Hennessy and his
We've
associates.
spoken about this before. Was it personal with Sherry, or was he sent there?
Well, I mean, I think it was a bit of both, I think. But mostly, I think it was pretty personal. That he wasn't a hitman for hire. He would have had a personal animosity with the Hennessys.
Crazy thing to do as well. I mean, it's obviously something you'd be probably doing off your head.
But again, there had been a build-up. There had been a number of incidents of violence. And in the aftermath of his killing, there would have been innocent people that would have been associated with Tristan Sherry, would have been targeted again and again. So Tristan Sherry wasn't a gunman for hire at all.
Now, the attack and the assault we're talking about, if we get down into the weeds of that, as I say, it gives us a little window into the kind of violence that is happening at the back of that Hennessy house, and the kind of fear, I suppose, that is then sent out into the community, because while this individual was, or they were certainly, at least, and some of them remain charged in relation to this incident, we can only imagine how many things like this happened. They had obviously customised that branding iron.
Yes.
Had they used that before, etc., etc. It's quite an organised situation that Devon has agreed, that he was part of. But an individual comes to the house, goes out the back and is in the shed. And all of a sudden his mobile phone is taken from him and he's threatened in relation to money owed, or that he has touted, or...
Yeah, I mean, there was some sort of... I think it's heard in some of the initial hearing in court that they'd... one of the alleged attackers had suggested that they had given him misinformation that had then somehow come back. So he is clearly, they suspect him of being an informant.
An informant, or they're certainly accusing him of that.
Yeah.
So this individual is beaten.
Yeah.
He is...
waterboarded at one stage.
Yeah.
It is evidence that he is threatened with being raped, that at another point he is run over with a motorbike, and he's obviously branded with the word rat a number of times, while also being repeatedly beaten.
And Devon Hennessy in particular was initially charged with preparing this man for the branding.
Yeah.
So he had a hands-on role in that part of the attack, and 4 men remain before the courts. They haven't pleaded as of yet. They'll be back up. But it was just and of course, I think what made it even sort of more stark for everybody was that this photograph was released of the man.
Yeah.
Bare-chested, a young guy, bare-chested. I mean, evidence around that photograph, where it came from, how it was passed around social media, hasn't yet been heard.
No, I mean, look, the photograph comes. I don't think it was taken in the Hennessy home. I think it was taken in the aftermath. But these things go around on social media, and it went around really quickly. But I suppose if you see the image, you can see it's not difficult to imagine the amount of torture and pain that individual went through. But it is only the latest in a long line of extreme violence used by Devon Hennessy.
So, October for his sentence. The other 4 remain before the courts. They could potentially plead also in relation to this. Usually when a guy like Hennessy pleads like that, it means that he's banged to rights in the evidence that he will have seen in the book of evidence.
Yeah, he'll have seen. There's obviously, there will be forensic investigations as part of it. DNA taken, we don't know. But yeah, I mean, if somebody takes an early plea, often the reason is because they know which way it's going to go. Devon Hennessy has a number of serious convictions. done a lot of, as well, kind of minor convictions. On one occasion, he punched a man in the courthouse and threatened to kill him. He's been involved in a lot of road traffic, some minor drug dealing convictions, but all of that will go against him.
I meant to say there earlier when we were talking about the hunger strike, and they all claimed they were going to go on a hunger strike. There was a lot of mouthing off in the courtroom at that stage. There was a lot of publicity around this case and these men being brought before the courts. And I suppose in the case of certainly Devon Hennessy, the Gardaí, it was an opportunistic moment as well for the Gardaí to get him off the streets, to break down that cell structure that he had around him and to quell some of the violence. Because, we spoke in the beginning about how much this guy has cost the state. The overtime, the amount of policing that has to go into that feud, those one after the other feuds in that Blanchardstown area. We got a sense during that brilliant documentary series, The K, and later The Guards, of the kind of way that young officers were being treated when they went out in response to incidents. And
if they're treating guards like that, you can only imagine how they're treating the local people. And I did speak to some of those local people, and one of them told me it's just like a totally different area.
Really?
Since they were taken into custody. It's unrecognisable. And look, they will get a chance in October. Devon Hennessy will get a chance to show some mitigation, but it's a very serious crime, and the courts do take those crimes very seriously.
Apart from his guilty plea. And of course, still before the courts are his brother, Jason Hennessy Jr., who's 28, 22-year-old Brandon Hennessy, and their addresses is actually Sheep Hill Avenue, which is the family home. Kenneth Fitzsimons, who's 45, and his 24-year-old son, Dean Fitzsimons, from Castle Curravale, Dublin 15. All remanded in custody. Okay.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.